Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome back to another episode of the New Block Nerds podcast. I am your host, Chris, a.k.a. Prince, with the homie Darron, a.k.a. Medic Grizzly. Darron, how we doing, bro?
Doing good, man. How you doing, B?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. How was your New Year's?
It was solid, man. Trouble,
Good,
sorry. It was a good time. Good time.
good. That's always a good time. Yeah, always a good
Yours?
time. Mine was good, man. We had a couple of friends come over, in the area. Just, kind of played some games, drank a little bit, probably too much champagne than I care to
Okay.
admit, but we're good. You know what I mean? We're still alive.
You were in your home. That's all that matters. Like you're not out doing anything dumb. Having a good time.
No. It was very, very chill. Just a couple of friends. Nothing crazy. Actually, the first time in a while that I've actually stayed up long enough to see the ball drop. Usually
Yo,
my wife and I are like zombies by like 10 o'clock.
you're not the only one. This is the first time I can remember I'm like, what channels come on? I don't even know. And then Jay pulled it, popped up. We're playing Trouble, and she was like, "Okay, we'll put it on right now." I'm like, I don't even care about that. Let's get back to the game. Like we're good. Let's set the clock. It's midnight.
Yeah. Because if I watch this, I'm gonna fall asleep. I need to do something else
pretty much
to keep my mind occupied. Yeah. but yeah, so last chapter, we did Daenerys. So we were across the narrow sea. This chapter, we are back in the north with Lord Eddard, receiving King Robert Baratheon and all of his host. So, Darron, me and you were kind of talking off air about this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, as someone who just watched the show, and this is kind of your first time really getting into the books, how did you feel about this chapter as far as just a lot of information given in this chapter, a lot of like stuff that's in Ned's brain, that we didn't get in the show?
Well, how I feel about it was like the show really didn't give it justice as far as like just how much of a warrior King Robert was. So if you see the show, you see almost like a fat slob that's having a good time, drinking, eating. I'm not saying like slob, but he's having a good time. He's enjoying the life, finer things of life. But when they actually go into how they said they haven't seen each other, I think it was 9 years was the last time they seen each other, and how King Robert was 6'5". Now you and I know we both play sports. 6'5", that's a big guy. That's a big guy right there. So then he said how he was built and everything else, and now they see him, his size matches girth. Like they basically trying to explain that he is now Papa's a big giant pig. He's having a good time enjoying the king life.
A very nice way of saying the king is fat now.
Yeah, I mean that's what he is. So and then seeing that, and then seeing they said 40 horses pulled their family just to get him over there, and how he was talking about how the north is so big, and like he didn't realize his other 6 kingdoms combined compared to the north, and how the travel was. So just knowing that all this took place just to get there to see Ned, we didn't really get that into the actual show. It just tells you all the this is actually really important. They went through a lot of hurdles to get here.
Yeah, and that's like the really good thing that George does with his writing, especially this early on in the book, is giving you a bunch of information about the setting of the world without it feeling like, let me tell you about where we are. It's just like you get the sense from how long they've traveled that you understand, okay, this is wherever the king sits, like wherever like the actual like capital is quite a ways away from Winterfell. Yes. They're all the way in the north, and like you said, the other 6 kingdoms can fit into the north.
Yeah.
Like on surface area. So like, I mean, like this is a big place. This is a huge place. And you get a little information about, how Robert and Ned were really close friends back in the day. So the first thing that they do, or that Robert does, is basically tell Ned, they're still like in the courtyard in the castle, and they're like, and he's like, hey, take me down to your crypts. I want to pay my respects. And you get a little bit here before they go into the crypts, and you get some more information later. But Ned says, like, in his head, he loved him for that, and for remembering her still after all these years.
It's like he's still the king, he's still all these things, but like he still remember his sister, everything's going on. But on a little piggyback off that, it's the first time the Lannisters' names was dropped. It's the first time, like in this book, that like And if you notice, watch the shows, it's a big part they play in this whole entire storyline. So knowing like this is how they were introduced, that they went from King's Landing all the way up here to the north of this, and how Robert said, first things first, I want to go pay my respects. It tells you like his mind where it's at no matter what.
Right. And like you get a little hint into Robert and Cersei's relationship because she made objections about it, like saying like, look, dude, it's cold. We've been riding all day. You know, the crypt isn't going anywhere. Let's just all just refresh ourselves and we can, you can go do your thing later. Yeah. And Robert just kind of gives her this look. And then her brother, Jaime, who is a member of the King's Guard, just kind of escorts her away. So you're getting a little hint into, what that political marriage, how that's going.
No words, a straight look. Yeah, and Jaime's like, I'm just gonna take you away. He's not playing about this.
At all. Yeah. So they get into the crypts.
What is the crypts? Like for people that's new to this, like what is it?
Oh, yeah, awesome. So the Winterfell Crypts are basically caverns underneath the castle of Winterfell, where all of the lords of House Stark are laid to rest. There's a lot of really, really good things in the, like whenever George talks about the crypts, it's so creepy. But again, we've talked about this dozens of times, I feel like already. He makes inanimate objects. He describes them in a very lifelike way, right? So when he's talking about Robert and Ned walking down the corridor past all these tombs, he says the lords of Winterfell watch them pass. And remember, like the way that they're carved, they don't have like pupils, right? Like how you would see like a stone statue, saying their eyes are kind of like looking out into like eternal darkness or whatever, but they're watching them pass. So the North is so heavily associated very early between like weirwoods, the others, the crypts. Everything is very, very creepy. Everything, like you have all these things that Ned and Catelyn, they always feel like they're being watched. And like one of the good things that I love about like how the crypts are like described, they talk about the stone sculptures. They're sitting down with direwolves curled at their feet.
Yeah.
And they have iron longswords laid across their lap. And the purpose of this, we find out, is for them to keep what they call vengeful spirits at bay. And some of the older ones that have been there for centuries, some of those longswords have rusted away into just nothing, pretty much at this point. And Ned kind of gets visibly kind of like shudders at the thought of, I wonder what that means if their swords are not keeping their spirits at bay anymore. But again, it's just that little stuff that George always does to just kind of keep that creepiness in the forefront of your mind whenever you're dealing with the North and the crypts and the weirwoods and all these other kind of things.
And speaking of like almost like travel time, everything else, and how they said like into the North and how long it took to get there. Getting down to these crypts, it was a good long walk path. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna turn the corner, here it is. Like this is a very long, cold, air can feel coming through. Like you just felt the North atmosphere. And they mentioned how like King Robert was out of breath just walking down there. So it shows like how far he has came from the great beast to what he is now, and also tells you this is a lot of homage, paying a lot of tribute.
Yeah, and one of the things that we get very early on too, kind of, piggybacking on what you were saying about, King Robert kind of being like a slob. He's talking about wanting to bring Ned south so that he can get a taste of summer. Go ahead. He's just kind of a pig. Because he's talking about, women lose all modesty in the heat. He's talking about like
Yes.
how in the river beneath the castle, you know, they're always swimming naked, and you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of see him just like lighting up when he's talking about like just completely perving out about these girls and like
Mm-hmm.
um but again,
There's a
it's just
quote
a
on
little bit
there.
more info just on like, you know, King Robert and you know how he gets down.
Yeah, like there's a quote on there. It was like, you can. There's how alcohol was so like accessible and how it was so cheap up there. Everything else, it was like you can get drunk by just breathing the air. Like that tells you right there. Like that's just party life, straight Vegas style. If you want to put anything, it's always accessible there. Versus the North is like, this is no offense, it's grandma's house. Like
Yeah.
nothing's
Yeah.
going on over here
Nothing
at
fun is
all.
happening up here. Yeah.
It's
Nothing
like
fun.
two different sides of the coin, and Ned's like, I like it up here. I'm fine. I'm cool. And
Yeah.
King is like, no, come down. I gotta take you somewhere. I gotta show you out. This is a good time down here. Up here is not where it's at.
Yeah, like Robert even he complains about the summer snows.
Mm-hmm.
And Ned's like, I mean, you know, summer snows, they happen, dude. I mean, I hope they weren't too much trouble. But I mean, again, this is a place where it snows in the summer. So
Yes.
it's, you know,
Yes.
it's different. It's different. But again, you know, to that end too, you get some more info about like High Garden and some of these other locations in Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of good info there just about like where we are and kind of how like the proximity of things, how far away Winterfell really is from like
Yeah.
everyone else. Which explains why the Northerners are so much different than like everyone
Mm-hmm.
else in the realm because they're so far away from everything. They have their own religion, like they're just different people. Um, so we were talking about this off air too. You mentioned that before you read the books, you didn't realize that Ned had an older brother.
No, we knew about Leanna, like we knew about his sister, and it was like little breadcrumbs growing the whole time. So we knew she played a huge part. I'm not giving out too much right now, as far as the show, but I didn't know he had a brother. And like inside the details of the text, it goes to there was three tombs. So eventually, Ned and King Robert they go to and they stop at three tombs, and it said that it was Ned's father, and then it was Brandon, and he was killed when he was 20 by the Mad King. Like it actually said like at 20 you was strangled by the Mad King. Like this is like that's why the North don't really rock with nobody. Like that tells you right there that there's more depth and feelings and emotion to this entire kingdom than people realize.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. It's I don't know, like this is probably my third or fourth time reading through the book, so
Yeah.
but like reading it back again, it's just like getting that info just about how Ned and Robert came to be, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we know that we just got off a Daenerys chapter where we learned a little bit about the Targaryen dynasty, and now
Yep.
we're kind of getting the other side of you know of the coin here with Ned and Robert's perspective on you know what kind of how it all went down 15 years past, right? Um so yeah, so then he had an older brother. I love that they put in there too really quick that he was killed just a couple days before he was supposed to wed Catelyn Tully of Riverrun.
Yes.
So you realize that okay, Ned and Catelyn got married out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to marry Brandon, who was the heir, who was the firstborn son and the heir to Winterfell. He
Mm-hmm.
died.
Next in line.
So did Lord Rickard, who was you know the Lord of Winterfell. So the next in line was Ned. So um, again, man, you're learning that this world is fucked up, man. Westeros is
Yeah.
fucked up. I mean, again, Brandon died at 20, Lyanna died at 16. Like, I mean, Ned is what 35 at this point, something like
Yeah.
that.
He's lived life.
And he's got a bunch of gray hair. Like he's like a 35 is like a middle-aged man in Westeros. You know
Yes.
what I mean? So these guys they've been through the ringer. They have been through the ringer.
So tell me, how did you feel about showing how King Robert, and then when he starts the tomb, and then like he puts his hand on the tombstone as if like it was flesh, and shows like his true emotion for Ned's sister and how he really adored her and how he really felt that this was my wife, not what I currently have.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with kind of the backstory, um, Robert Baratheon, before he was king, obviously, was betrothed to Lyanna Stark, which is Ned's sister, which we talked about. Um, at some point, for reasons we do not have time to get into today.
Oh, not yet.
Rhaegar, who was the crown prince at the time, runs off with Lyanna Stark. Now, some people, depending on who you ask, will have differing opinions about what happened. Some people say they ran off together. Some people say that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna and raped her.
What's Rhaegar's last name? So people know.
Rhaegar Targaryen. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So basically, what happened with Brandon, Ned's brother, he went to King's Landing and basically told the Mad King, tell your soft ass son to come out here and bring my sister back, or I'm gonna gut him, basically. Well, you can't walk into King's Landing and threaten the crown prince, no matter what he did. So Brandon was arrested, and then the Mad King called Lord Rickard Stark to basically ransom his son. He comes down there. The Mad King sentences them both to death. What Lord Rickard does is he says, okay, well, I demand trial by combat. We've all seen the show. We know what trial by combat is.
Yeah.
The Mad King, as fucking nuts as he is, says, okay, well, my champion is fire. Not a person, fire. So he had the King's Guard tie him up and kind of string him up like in the throne room, like in midair. And they started a fire under him. And essentially cooked him alive. At the same time, it gets worse. At the same time, he brings Brandon Stark into the throne room and attaches a little like strangle device that's like hooked up to a wall behind him. And he puts a long sword just out of reach. And he says, if you can cut your father free, you guys can go home. And so Brandon strangles himself, trying to get the sword so he can cut his father free.
It's like some Saw movie type stuff.
Yeah. So after that, the Mad King basically wrote to Jon Arryn, which we got a little bit of exposition about in a previous chapter, ordering him to send him the heads of Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark, who were his wards at the time.
Yes.
In the Eyrie. This is when Jon Arryn, Robert Baratheon, and Ned Stark all call their banners. Westeros, descends into civil war and ends with all of the Targaryens dead, essentially, except for Viserys and Daenerys, pretty much. So,
which in the previous chapter explains why Dany was by herself and whatever happened beforehand. So it's getting more deep.
Right. But to bring it back full circle, just about about what you said about Robert touching Lyanna's statue and kind of like trying to like will her back to life, pretty much. You kind of really get to see, this was not the life that Robert wanted. Robert never wanted to be king. In fact, he says that any chance he gets, he hates being king. He told Ned, he was like, I promise you, holding the throne is 1,000 times harder than winning it.
Yes.
But you get to see where like Robert's real feelings are. Like he's not built for this. He's not built for this life. He's a warrior. No. All he wanted to do was ride in the battle, and that made him feel alive. And ever since he won the throne, he's been kind of empty. But yeah, so I mean, we get some more information just about Lyanna, and of course, Ned kind of reminisces about the day that she died. Those famous words, "Promise me, Ned," which we won't get into right now. But
the writing is so great, man. It's so great. Like knowing a little bit and realizing that there's that little bit's a lot. It's a lot coming really fast. And knowing that how you have young lads fighting a battle, rebellion. The Mad King was going crazy. That's ridiculous for what he had to do for the Starks. And also tells you and paints a picture on why he said Ned had to marry. He didn't plan on marrying. Their relationship and how their dialect towards each other, how it be a little strange at times. Now you see why. And also you understand why the North just does not care about anything outside of the North. Yep. Because every time they go outside the North, crazy stuff happens.
Yep.
So you see how even King Robert's she shouldn't be down here. She should be up on the hill with the clouds. Just seeing a straight, soft, romantic side out of him. And this was a great warrior. And then how he talks about how he promised that he would get revenge. And how He's only mad that he only did it one time, and that he dreams about doing it more and more every time he gets a chance.
Yeah. This dude hates Rhaegar something fierce. I mean, when he dropped that line, to your point, and he was like, I vowed to kill him for what he did to her, and that's like, you did, and he's just like, only once. I was like, wow, you really hate this fucking guy, don't you?
Hate him. So in the book, it explains how, like, remember Robert King, he's 6'5", right? Built guy, powerful, like small forward in the NBA type, and how his weapon of choice and that he used to basically cave in his chest, and how the jewels were all over the place in the river and flowing. It just shows the impact of what he put in, how much anger and force he had just to get that kill back. And Ned said as it came late, hey, he was already in the basically floating, bro. It was over.
It was over by the time Ned even got on the scene, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because after the Crown Prince dies, it's, what are we fighting for at this point?
And have his troops like in the actual like the water trying to get the jewels. Yeah. That tells you right there what allegiance is. It's about money. And it all comes down to that everybody wants to have their own cut of the actual pie.
Yeah.
So and you got the feeling that Ned knew that you came all the way for something. It wasn't just for this. And then he tried to distract him with saying, hey, don't you gotta visit the wall? Don't you gotta do other things? And what is your feelings about that, knowing how the others in the first prologue, we mentioned that, how we really haven't dabbled too much on that, and how we said winter is coming, and how King Robert's like, I'm okay. The wall can stay there longer. It's fine. It doesn't need me.
Yeah. Again, it's just George will always, like, there's obviously the political stuff in the South is what kind of keeps you reading the book a little bit, but every now and again, he'll drop little hints about like, hey, don't forget about this stuff all the way up in here, all the way up here that we started the whole series with. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's par for the course for most of the lords in Westeros. No one thinks that it's a real threat. Like Robert said, it stood for 8,000 years. It can hold for another couple of days. Man. Which, I don't know. Maybe it won't.
So who's at the North that so the fans will know about the connection with the North and how there's a point of contact that tells Ned and informs him what's going on?
What do you mean exactly?
Does he have a brother up there? John talking about the snow and everything else. So there was more depth in there talking about how.
His. So Ned's younger brother Benjen is a man of the Night's Watch. He's a ranger on the Night's Watch, which. We'll get some. I think the next chapter is John, so we'll get some. Okay. We'll get some Benjen a little bit. But yeah, speaking of John's, they start talking about John Arryn and kind of, his sickness and how he died. And you're starting to get a little bit of hints that maybe this wasn't natural causes, only because, Robert was like, if you would have seen him a couple of weeks ago, you thought he lived forever. And then whatever he got hit with, it burned right through him. I've never seen someone get so sick so fast. And again, they kind of bond over that because, of course, they were wards together. So they basically grew up, being raised by John Arryn.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it finally comes out. To your point, Ned realizes, look, kings don't come up to the North very often. I know we're homies and everything like that, but what you want, dog? And Robert drops the bomb on him basically and tells him, I want you to serve as hand of the king, which is the second most powerful man in the realm. I mean, the hand of the king is the right hand man to the king. I mean, he speaks with the king's voice. He commands the king's armies, draws up their laws, does all the things. So, but again, that means that Ned would have to leave the North and go live down south in King's Landing. He does not want to do that. He couldn't think of something he would want less.
Yes. And like there's a line in there of saying what the king dreams, the hand builds. So let the king, he just wants someone there to do everything for him while he still drinks booze and has fun with whatever participants he chooses to be around. That's all he wants to do. And Ned's like, I'm not an idiot. I'm cool. I don't want nothing to do with that. The way you guys maneuver, plus what y'all did to my pops, my brother, and like the history, I don't want nothing to do with this.
Yeah. And you get a little info too about how Ned feels about the Lannisters. I know we got a quick peek of them, or Cersei and Jaime at least,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the chapter. But, Robert talks about, Jon Arryn's son, Robert Arryn, who is only a boy, but since his dad has just passed, he's now effectively Lord of the Eyrie. And talking about Robert wanted to have him fostered by Lord Tywin Lannister. And Ned is like, well, if Lysa, who is Robert Arryn's mom and Catelyn's sister, if she doesn't want to consent to that, you could send them here. I mean, he's cousins to my kids. So, I mean, that should work out.
Yeah, I guess.
And Robert's like, Tywin's already given his consent. I don't want to slight him. And Ned's kind of like, man, fuck Tywin. Basically. I don't give a fuck about what a Lannister thinks. I don't care about Lannister pride.
So effortlessly, just like, yo, like, I don't care. That's my nephew in a sense. Like, I want him up here. Like, screw that. And on top of that, you see Ned also trying to, like, build a better defense on why he doesn't want to go down there. Like, give me more reason to stay where I'm at.
Right.
Go about your business.
Right.
Love seeing you, bro, but you got to go. I don't want to go with you.
Yeah. But then, of course, Robert drops another bombshell on him that he was not expecting.
No.
So, Robert kind of reminisces about the old times, saying like, look, we're homies. If your sister had lived, we would have been brothers by law.
Yes.
But, it's not too late for us to join our houses. So I have a son, you have a daughter. Let's hook it up. Which, Ned, Ned's surprised, but it's also a huge step up for any family in Westeros, right? Because Robert's son is the crown prince, which means he's going to be king one day, which means Sansa would be queen of the Seven Kingdoms. That's a huge come up. That's a huge come up. So
it's like, she's 11. No, she's 11. It's not happening. Like, I don't want.
Yeah, Robert's like, that's fine. They don't have to get married next week. We just, we can just betroth them. You know what I mean? We just start the courtship now. Why not?
And just seeing, like, knowing how the character was, and like how King joked about how, like, Ned, you're not laughing, and I'm paraphrasing, like, the man's laughter in the north gets frozen in your throat, and how, like, that's like a paraphrase of what it was. And it shows you how, like, stone cold they were about, I don't play these games, like, go that way. And now you bring my daughter into it too. No, she's too young. I don't want anything to do with this. You're dropping too much on me, my guy. Too much.
And it's going back to what we said earlier in the chapter about, like, the the stone sculptures kind of feeling alive. When Robert is talking to Ned and when he offers him the hand the job of Hand of the King.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Ned is like, oh, I'm not worthy of the honor. And he's like, I'm not trying to honor you. I want you to run the kingdom so I can like eat, drink, and whore my way into an early grave. And he laughs. And there's a little part in there where it says the statues looked on with disapproving eyes.
Yes.
And it's just like, again, it's just showing you that, like, again, Northerners are different. They don't get down like this. And House Stark, like the legacy of House Stark, does not approve of this Robert Baratheon guy. Clearly. I mean, we get so many little touches like that throughout this chapter. That it's kind of letting you know, and again, to your point about, like, every time the Starks go south, some crazy shit happens to them.
Every single time.
So,
like, it's not like a typical road. It's like, some of the worst possible case times 2 happens every single time. And they also mentioned how the crypt and how they that's why I was explaining what the crypt is, how there's also there's open tombs. And how Ned's like, that's made for me and my children. It made him uneasy about the future and what's going to take place. And then they dropped the line, winter is coming. Like, just let you remind you, like, hey, all this other political stuff's happening, the whole marriage, the whole bylaws, trying to join everything together, how the king has his own agenda. But Ned, winter's still coming, bro. So what you going to do?
Yeah. And, I feel for Ned in this situation because he obviously does not want to go. He would, if he had his choice,
I
he
wouldn't
would
want to
be
go
in
either. Fuck them.
Winterfell and just stay up there forever until he croaks. But
Would you want to go?
hell no, I wouldn't want to go.
Exactly. No, I'm not going there at all.
But where it gets tricky for him is, look, their father figure and basically their foster father died, who was running the kingdoms for Robert the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Robert clearly doesn't trust anyone in the South. Ned understands that, like, the South is just, again, Northerners are different. He knows that they play a lot of games. He's not really with that. And he knows that Robert wouldn't have come all this way did he not really need him.
Yeah.
To put things back in order. And then on top of that, he offers to make your eldest daughter queen. It's kind of a hard thing to say no to. I mean, I get it. Hindsight is 2020, but you know, if your best friend that you haven't seen in a couple of years comes and he's like, "Oh, yo, I need your help," you're gonna help him.
And also with Ned being and the Starks being what they are, about how small part in there talk about how there's king of the North. Like they mentioned how the Starks had a king of their own land, and how that's how long the history of the Starks are.
Right.
And how you kept your word and you do what you have to do for the benefit of your family. So you're mentioning how this next phase of his daughter becoming the queen, and how he now can actually see the realm and see how it's going. You almost feel like you're obligated to protect and know what's going on, because even King the Eddard said, "I'm not. You talk to your wife about it. Go ahead, but don't make me wait that long. I want to make sure we get this thing rolling."
Right.
So it tells you that, hey, we're friends, but I'm still the king.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a weird dynamic for, I'm sure, for probably for both of them, right? Because like if you're, I understand like that one perspective. If you're Ned, you're just like, I got to tread carefully. Like, he's my friend, but he's also the king. But also for Robert too, right? Like, yeah, like that's my homie, but he's also my subject as well too. And you get a little taste of that too when he's like, oh, you know, you could have done something for John Aaron, for all his years of service. You owe him that much. And Robert kind of has to be the king again and say, you know, he did his duty to his liege lord.
Yes, it was
but I'm not ungrateful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But he's like, but I'm not ungrateful. So he's like, you know, don't get it twisted. Like, he did what he was supposed to do because that's the law. Yeah. I'm glad that he did it. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I'm still the king, to your point. You know what I mean? So like, he can still give that command to Ned, and I feel like it's a tricky line he's got to kind of balance, because he doesn't want people in the realm thinking that he's treating the Starks different just because him and Ned are homies. Because at the end of the day, he's still king and his word is still law. So it's an interesting little dynamic that I can't wait to get more into when Ned does get down to King's Landing and him and Robert have differing views on how to handle certain, you know, political issues. It gets really interesting.
Different sides of a coin. That's the world, the way they walk, the way they handle themselves. It's like, y'all were friends, y'all were homies. Yeah. Like, then it also tells you how the realm has changed him completely, not only from the outside but from the inside. And then the next chapter is Jon Snow, bro.
Like, I'm excited for the Jon chapter.
It tells you, like, everyone at this point in time is at the North. They're all gathered, and then your next chapter is Jon. Okay, well, that tells you something. Like, there's something going on here. Of all the characters you could possibly choose, that's who's next.
And it's a great chapter too. I can't wait until we do that one. I think reading the books, I would say Jon, Daenerys, and Tyrion are my favorite POV characters.
Oh, Tyrion's a freaking
Tyrion's great. I can't wait until we get a Tyrion chapter. That's gonna be hilarious.
Is that soon?
I don't know. I don't want to look too far ahead, but we'll just we'll focus on Jon next time. But you got anything else?
No, I just love the dynamic and how all of this was, like, in my mind, is taking place almost like a secret meeting underground while everyone else is above. Yeah. And it's like a foreshadowing thing of how the kingdom was ran. There's conversations that everyone at the top knows, but there's real conversations down in the gritty. And it tells you, like, in the trenches, when things pop off, who's really by your side. So Kings came down there, and, like, he's married to a Lannister. He's been up there, but he still does not feel completely safe. And then you mentioned how it just tells you like there's more coming, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That is some very good foreshadowing as far as just like the dynamic of this quote unquote Game of Thrones that they play. But yeah, man, no, I'm excited for the next chapter. Again, like I said, Jon is one of my favorite characters, so excited to get into it. But Darron, it's been a pleasure as always, man.
Maybe I get back to these chapters. It's fun. We love it. And thank you guys for follow, subscribe, comment. We love it. We love it, man. We appreciate you guys.
And we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace and love.